Red was never her favorite color. As the blood poured into her mouth, slicked her tongue, and sated her thirst, all she saw was red. The grimy walls under the bridge radiated with the same color which bubbled onto her face. Crimson made the world. Red colored her eyes. For those moments, just when his kicking turned inhuman, soulless, trapped in flight over fight, she learned to love it. There was a time of joy. Daughter was happy, despite being the only child in a house that she always felt would be better with a few brothers. The home was a minute or so outside of town. It was an older house with a strange green room with books all over, a kitchen which always smelled of fruit, and a den which was never quiet. They had no television, only radio, and when the music played it filled the house. Music of all kinds filled her mind. She loved that room because it was the family room. That was the room where the music played. She loved music because her family loved music. Her father worked long and worked hard to earn a decent living. Her mother worked too, as hard as father, in fact, at various odd jobs when daughter was at school. Mother and father doted on daughter. She was their littlest princess, smart and pure-hearted, curious, and given to the strangest ideas. She always wore a blue dress, with white lace because blue and white were kind colors that never caused any problems. Not like red, at least. A single pigtail dangled from the side of her head, because pigs had only one tail. She told silly jokes and played tricks on mother and father because she had been told laughter was the best medicine. She never wanted mother or father to get sick. She painted rainbows in watercolors because rainbows only came out after it rained, or when father did that funny thing with the water hose after cutting the grass. Rainbows and waterfalls were family affairs. She loved her family. They were her treasure. And for 12 years their lives were idyllic. Simple pleasures were all they needed. Happy moments were common and special, like those 7 Christmas times with the biggest, brightest trees hiding the biggest, most colorful presents. But it did not last. There was a time of fear. In her 13th year, daughter fell ill. Her arms shook and her legs gave out. Her stomach ached. Waking nightmares caused her to cry out for her parents night after night after night. Mother took her to the hospital, though the doctors could not explain what was happening to her. She cried. Daughter was frightened because she did not want to die. Then she was frightened because she did not want to see mother and father cry. Then she was too weak to be frightened. One day father cooked, which was a very strange thing indeed. He fed a special soup to daughter. It was delicious. More than that, it made daughter feel so much better she wanted to go out and play with father and mother. And they did. Each week, father made his special soup, and each week, daughter felt better than ever. But mother and father changed. Daughter was not allowed to go to school any longer. When they played together, they played behind the house instead of the front, where they had played for years. On the days before father cooked, mother was nowhere to be seen. On those days, daughter felt lonely. On one of those days, she felt so lonely that she just had to see mother. She felt ill and slow. She felt sad and afraid that the sickness had come back. Father was busy in the kitchen, preparing ingredients for her special soup. He made a rule that she should never interrupt him during preparation, or else her soup would not be made right. So she stayed away and looked for mother. She heard her voice in the den. No music played. Mother spoke on the phone. Daughter crept along, not wanting to surprise her. It was never good to surprise her when she was on the phone. Daughter came to the edge of the stairs. She peeked in. Mother hung the phone up a few seconds later. She whispered in their old language about things daughter did not understand. Poor mother, she thought. She was sad. Daughter knew it was her chance to make mother smile again. Mother had not noticed daughter come into the room. A creak in the old floorboards caught her attention. When she turned, she expected to see father. But when she saw daughter standing in the center of the room, she knew her worst fear had just come true. Daughter no longer wanted to make mother smile again. She never noticed the way mother's neck ticked along with the beat of her heart. It sounded so strange. It felt so inviting. It looked so delicious. Father heard the screams. He rushed into the den to find daughter atop mother, her fingernails etching gashes across mother's face. Daughter grasped for her head, trying to bring mother's neck closer to her fangs. Her mother screamed for her daughter to hear her, to let her go, but father knew that could not happen. He rushed inside, tore daughter away, and then forced her into the kitchen, where he poured the raw soup into her mouth. For 2 days after, daughter struggled with the worst night terrors she had ever seen. Terrible visions came to her, ones of red death and crimson monsters, which only appeared from the corners of her eyes. Waking in the drenching sweat, she remembered mother was hurt. Calling out for her, she rushed downstairs. Her father was there with mother, but mother did not look the same. She was covered in white bandages, with red blotches staining the linen. She could not stand on her own. It was then that daughter realized what she had done. She had almost killed mother. She remembered the feeling of her nails against her skin, how the red fluid flowed onto her palms. She remembered liking it. She remembered wanting more. But the worst feeling, even as she fell onto the steps and cried for her mother, was that she wanted to do it again, and again, and again, and again, and again. This is the time of sorrow. She ran away that night, leaving a note apologizing for her sickness and what she had done to mother. She ran without knowing where she was running to. She ran through the forest until the night was so dark that she could not see the branches on the ground. She ran until sunrise rose to noon and then fell to another sunset. Her legs never tired, her lungs never ached. Eventually, daughter came to a road she did not recognize. It was an old road, the kind of road that father's favorite singer sang about in a place west of Virginia. It felt good to her to take that road. Maybe it was the kind of road father would have used, and so she continued down that road, humming John Denver the whole way into the next day. 3 days passed. Not once did she dare leave father's road because she might find another person. Her feet began to ache, and her shoes began to break. Her blue dress with white lace was now closer to dusty brown with splotches of muddy black. Her throat was dry, her knees were weak, and she wanted something to drink. On her 4th day she wandered away from the dirt roads and came upon a ruddy and near-ruined old street which passed beneath a short bridge. Rain began falling, so she took shelter beneath that bridge. On the far side she noticed a man who seemed to be crusted in dirt. He wore an old hat and an even older denim coat. He carried a paper bag with a drink inside, but daughter knew this was no drink she wanted. And he had the bushiest beard she had ever seen, but he stank worse than the piles of trash scattered against the grimy brick walls. Worried, she stayed away. It rained the whole day after. Daughter and the dirt man stayed under the bridge, ignoring each other as best they could. But as the rain fell harder, daughter's thirst grew worse. Shivers started in the afternoon. It was still summertime, but she felt cold. Her head throbbed with a pulsing, stabbing pain, and by the evening she did not have the strength to stand, and then she fell into dark, nightmare-riddled sleep. Mother was there in the dream, red and wet with blood. Father was there too. Both were on the ground, motionless but crying. They called out for daughter to come home. They wanted her to come home. It was not her fault for attacking mother. It was just a moment, a mistake, a single slip of attention. It could be fixed. It would be fixed. She only needed to come home. The entire world shook. Daughter woke in a fright. Dirt Man stood above her, a worried, furrowed look in his eyes. "Are you all right, little miss?" he asked. But daughter did not look into his eyes. She looked at his throat, at his succulent, pulsing veins. A raspy, vicious, grating snarl slipped through her lips. Daughter snatched Dirt Man's wrist. She pulled with all of her might. He fell against the wall, and she was on him. Her arms wrapped him, pinning his own arms back. Her legs pressed his hips, crunching bone, tearing muscle. Dirt Man screamed. As he did, he reached towards the far side of his underbridge home, his neck extended. Daughter took her chance and bit down. Red was never her favorite color, but as Dirt Man's bitter blood slaked her thirst, she loved it. Each gulp banished the aches and pains away. It tasted so good, it felt so good, that she began to sob. Each drink reminded her of father's soup, and because of that she drank harder. She drank more and more and more. Dirtman fought back, throwing his arms in wild punches, kicking with his uninjured leg. He did not fight for long. Seconds into the attack, his body lost all sense of its humanity. He reached for nothing. He called out for nothing. Daughter would not let him do anything more. Once she had her fill, she slipped away from Dirtman. She felt the warm blood on her face and dragged her fingers to pull in as much as she could. She felt light on her feet, as if she were falling without worry. Euphoria, like sizzling light and sensation, came to her, and for a moment Daughter believed she saw the whole entire world in colors no other person knew about. Yellows brighter than the sun, greens better than any emerald, and silvery sweet starlight cascaded in rainbow falls onto everything. But then, once the colors faded to lesser shades and tints, Daughter saw Dirtman in the trash piles. He did not move. She went to him and shook him. Dirtman did not move. His snow-pale skin was wrinkly like a half-dried raisin. His face looked like it was still screaming. Daughter had killed him. She did not want to believe it. She shook him, begging him to get up, telling him that she was all right. She thanked him for asking and said that she wanted him to get up. But Dirtman never left that spot under the bridge. This is the end of Daughter. Despite the pouring rains and stinging winds, despite the storm and its thunderous lightning, Daughter ran away. Blindly she raced towards a place she hoped no other person would ever find. First, she had attacked Mother. Now she had killed Dirtman. Determined that no one else should ever be hurt by her hands, by her teeth ever again, she ran to what she hoped would be her own death. Rains hit her. Heavy leaves and thick branches struck her. Vines tripped her. Still she continued. She wept as she ran. She wondered what happened to her life. How did her life, her happy life with father and mother, come to this? How did she lose her green room and her music? How did she lose her rainbows and her watercolors? How did she lose mother and father? The ground gave way beneath her feet. Daughter fell into darkness, landing square on her belly and on her knee in a stream of rank water. Dazed, she struggled to her feet. Weeping, she continued into the dark for what felt like hours. And then she saw a light. At the end of the tunnel, she saw daylight. Her ribs ached and her knee could barely hold any weight. Still, she managed to reach that light. She found the end of the tunnel. It was caged. Heavy, rusted, and ugly metal bars blocked her path out. At first she cried, thinking she was trapped inside. No escape, no hope. She would die there in the smelly, nasty place. Then, realizing that yes, she would likely die in that drain, she knew she should not cry. It was for the best. No one would ever find her there. She could never hurt anyone else. Daughter sat against the curve of the wall and stared out to the forbidden world beyond the bars. The rains had stopped. Golden evening light shone on a vast forest which stretched across a far valley until reaching the tops of low mountains. And she smiled when she saw it. A rainbow, just like the ones father used to make, glowed over those low mountains. Daughter understood that she was right to choose to die, right there in the tunnel pipe. 5 days passed. Daughter stared at that forest the entire time. Rains came and went. Rainbows glowed before fading into figments of an imagined better world. On the 6th day the thirst returned. Colors vanished into gray shades. The once green forest looked dead. Rainbows no longer glowed. On the 7th day the pains were unbearable. Daughter coughed and choked. Her belly turned and spasmed. Her lips cracked as her knee flared with unspeakable pain. She went to the bars and pulled against them. They did not move. She bashed them with her fists. They did not break. She drove her head into them, hoping to break or bend them. Those bars did not budge 1 inch. But then she heard it. A scratching, sneaking sound came from behind her. Daughter turned and saw a rat chewing on a fleshy stump of a lizard's dead body. Red streaked its teeth. Her thirst needed that red. Daughter leapt for the rat, but it was too quick. It scurried away into the darkness. She gave chase. She heard it, louder than a thunder boom or firecracker blast. Her knees slowed her, but she still gave chase. She dove for it. The rat hopped out of her reach. She crawled at it, hissing, spitting, snarling at her prey. She chased that rat all the way to the end of the pipe, where a new light and a new road awaited her. And just as the plump rat was about to make its final escape, Daughter made a final leap for it and caught it by the tail. An instant later, she gripped the squeaking and squealing animal in her fingers. Daughter stretched it until it felt like its bones were ready to break, and then she moved to bite. Before her fangs sank into the rat's flesh, she retched. The flavor of the rat's blood reached her tongue before she even bit down. She succumbed to nausea, falling to her side and pouring what was left inside her belly onto the concrete. The rat hurried away into the dark. And now it came. Daughter had no strength left. Her hands and feet were numb. Her heart beat out of rhythm. Hazy, prickly airs lifted her. Death was only minutes away. "Papa," she whispered, searching for that last measure of who she was, before the fear and before the sorrow. "Papa, Mama, I love you." Daughter did not know what came after death. Papa told her there was a good place, a nice place, a place with blue diamond waters and white cotton candy clouds. He promised her that she would go there, and Mama agreed, adding that the ground was as white as snow, but as warm as a bath. As she rested there weak and dying, there was no blue, no white, and no warmth for Daughter. There was, however, a voice. In the last moment, right as she was ready to let go and die, he spoke to her in an accent she thought sounded Spanish. "Do not go yet." Daughter felt his hands take her by the shoulders. They lifted her up from the ground before placing her against a thing which felt warm and soft. It smelled like Papa's cologne. She managed to look and saw a man was there, cradling her in his arms. He looked like the kind of man she once saw in a book about old movies. A tall man, a knowing man, he smiled a dashing smile at her, and he had beautiful veins. Daughter had no strength left. Her hands reached, but she could not take him. She let out a crunchy, sand-dry groan. Feed, she thought, drink, kill him, take all of his red blood. "You're thirsty," the dashing man said. "Drink this." He pulled a pocket knife from his coat and sliced open his wrist. Heavy drops of crimson fell onto Daughter's lips and then into her mouth. Each drop was a drop of life. Daughter slurped and suckled on his wrist until he pulled away. She fought with him for a moment, desperate to take as much as his body could give. "There's no more for you," he said. Daughter did not believe him. She gripped his wrist, turned it towards her, and made ready to drink down more sweet blood. But the cut was gone. The blood had vanished. Daughter looked at him, confused and frightened. She could not make out his face. The only times the vagueness made any sense was out of the corner of her eye. "Will you come with me?" the dashing man said. "I have more for you. You will never go thirsty again. No more pain, child. Doesn't that sound good? What do you say?" "Please," she said. The dashing man took Daughter into his arms, so gently that she felt like Papa had found her. Mama was just next to him. The day was better. No more thirst, no more pain. Just family and music and waterfall rainbows in the backyard. She looked, hoping to see the gate and the green grass, but all Daughter saw was heavy white fog and nothing on the other side. The dashing man took her away. As they passed into that white, misty haze, Daughter faded from her own mind. What did she hope to see on the other side? What green waited for her? What music played? Who were the two shadows wandering behind her? She never knew.